G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle. I got a comment the other day suggesting I do a video specifically about us and the delisted free agency market, which is likely to be pretty relevant to us this year. So I thought that's a great idea for a video. And in today's video, we're going to summarize where we're at in terms of list spots and the pros and cons of going for a couple of these delisted free agents, or one, potentially two. We'll get into the specifics of that. But there's been a couple we're linked to quite closely, and we've pretty much got all our delisted players now, except for Luke Edwards. So what we're going to do is map out everyone who's left the list, how many spots we've got, different strategies we can use. And I've also got 7 or 8 different delisted free agency candidates we've got that I think could be suitable for us, bearing in mind we've pretty much only been linked to 2 of them. So let's start this video by summarizing the players that we formally cut from our senior list. Andrew Gaff retired, Jack Darling and Tom Barrass got traded. We cut Kobe Burgill, Jermaine Jones, Josh Rotham, Alex Witherden, and then 3 rookie listed players in Jai Culley, Zane True, and Jordan Baker. So the first thing we need to do is work out how many list spots that leaves us with. So that is 10 cuts, but Jordan Baker was a Cat B rookie, so that kind of counts outside of that. So if I'm doing the math correctly, that means we have 9 list spots. Further to that, Noah Long comes off the inactive list, and we rookie listed Jack Hutchinson's last year through the mid-season draft, which means we were carrying an extra player, which was within the rules, but we now need to get that back to the default number. So while we've cut 10 players, we really just have the 8 list spots. Further to that, we've traded in 3 players in Liam Baker, Matt Owies, and of Jack Graham through free agency, which leaves us with 5 list spots. We currently hold 3 picks in this year's draft, 12, 26, and 73, one of whom it's probably more than 50-50 that it's likely to be Malachi Champion. Bearing in mind, if he doesn't get bid on at all, we can sign him through to our Cat B rookie list. In that instance, I don't know if we have to upgrade Tyrell Dewar to the normal rookie list. This is getting a little bit murky, and even though I'm a massive West Coast nerd, this is where I start to check out. But getting back to the actual draft, how many list spots? So we've got 5 and we've got 3 picks there, and we've just assumed for the time being Malachi gets taken in the national draft and joins our main list, which leaves 2 spots left over. Now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, Luke Edwards. Luke Edwards is without a contract for next year, but he hasn't been formally delisted. And, you know, reading between the lines a little bit, I suspect what's happening here is West Coast probably can't delist him right now. I think they're awaiting some medical feedback around exactly where he sits with his concussions. With players dealing with concussion symptoms after retirement or something, West Coast has to do everything in its power to make sure they're supporting Luke Edwards, and delisting him right now, I presume there's something stopping them doing that. So I don't know if it's waiting medical advice. My suspicion is West Coast will probably going to delist Luke Edwards anyway, but if he has concussion symptoms, maybe they're just holding off before he's confirmed to not be able to play anymore, and then he's got to be supported after playing. I think that thing's a whole mess, which we won't necessarily get into right now. Obviously, thoughts and best wishes are with Luke Edwards. I really do hope he's okay. But just getting back to exactly how this affects our list. So if we've got 5 list spots, take 3. If we kept Luke Edwards, which I suppose is still a live option, like, you know, let's say he's cleared to play football again and West Coast say, actually, we want to give you another contract, that would give 1 list spot for a delisted free agent. If we then decide that Luke Edwards won't play football next year, won't be on our list, we have 2 spots for a delisted free agent. So what do we do with those 2 list spots in addition to the 3 draft picks we've already got there? So again, this is assuming 12, 26 and Malachi Champion join the Eagles. That leaves 2 list spots we've got to fill. Well, my plan A, as I talked about in a video, the most recent video on this channel actually, live trade options, how West Coast get back into this year's draft. In an ideal world, we take at least 1 more draft pick this year. I go through some options in the previous video of this channel, but if we can find a way to trade into the, you know, pick 30 to 40 range of this year's draft, then that takes another list spot. So that would give us 4 draft picks, 1 list spot. So we could then either sign Luke Edwards, or if we eventually delist him, that's where we take a delisted free agent. That for me is plan A. Plan B is for if we fail to trade into this draft at all. Then it becomes 2 list spots, and if Luke Edwards gets another contract, then we sign him up and take 1 delisted free agent. If we don't sign Luke Edwards to another contract, that leaves 2 spots for a delisted free agent. So I think it's still possible we take 2 delisted free agents, but there's further nuance to this as well, because we can actually leave that spot open for either a train-on player, which is entirely possible, or we leave it for the mid-season draft, potentially as well. So to clarify that, a train-on player, let's say the national draft, preseason draft, rookie draft, all pass and we still have a list spot, Any player that didn't get taken but nominated for those drafts, we can have train with us and sign as a supplemental player next year. So when I say delisted free agent, I'm loosely sort of including someone like a Denver Granger-Barrass who may get signed right now as a delisted free agent, or we might wait until after the draft, get him to train with us, and then sign him as a top-up player. Either way, it's still more or less getting onto our list in a slightly different way. So with that being said, we've got like capacity to take at least one delisted free agent and potentially two. And like I said, I'm broadly including train-on players under the umbrella of delisted free agent. So it's time to talk about some candidates. The two we've been linked to are Jack Carroll and Denver Granger-Barrass. With Carroll, 21-year-old midfielder from Carlton, originally from East Fremantle. He was taken pick 41 in the 2020 draft. He's played 21 games in 4 years, and he played most of them this year. What Jack would provide to us? Well, I mean, he's a midfielder that has spent 4 years in the system, so he's fairly developed. He seems like a pretty nifty sort of player. Like he's quick, or at least he appears quick. His kick is penetrating without being necessarily accurate. He doesn't win a lot of the footy, but sometimes that could come down to roll. And while I said he's a penetrating kick, I don't think he's a particularly strong ball user. But what he would add to us is a mature body as midfield depth. And I recently did my best 23 after the trade period as a video on this channel. And I also looked at our waffle team, and that waffle team on paper, that midfield in particular was very light. I had Campbell Chesser, Clay Hall, and Dom Sheed as our midfielders, and Dom Sheed's foot is still a big question mark. So if you thought the waffle team's midfield performed badly last year, well, it's on paper not looking any better next year. Now, we don't really want to recruit players to our senior list purely to bolster our waffle team, but he would add some depth, a guy who's played AFL before that could come in and support the AFL team as a bit of a squad player. And considering the cost, it could be worthwhile. We have been linked to him, while GWS have as well. Then there's Denver Granger-Barrass. He was pick 6 in the 2020 draft, and he's played 28 games for Hawthorn and didn't play a single game this year. Further to that, Hawthorn recruited Barras and Battle. So if there was any chance of him getting another contract at Hawthorn, it was dashed by their new recruits. So he's a tall intercepting defender. Now, from what I've heard, he obviously was drafted as a tall defender. I remember thinking he was a good player, good, like a high leaping athletic intercept player. But I don't think it went particularly well at Hawthorn because I believe, in his last couple of years there, he was trialled as a forward. Now, I think for West Coast, we absolutely need a tall defender. And I suppose we would probably prefer a mature age one who maybe hasn't hit his straps at AFL level, but someone who could potentially be a depth player at AFL level in 2025. So that is the appeal of Denver. He's at least physically mature. Is he any good? Well, let's be real. He didn't hit his straps at Hawthorn. He didn't have a particularly good 28 games there, but he was a former pick 6. So again, cost benefit, it could be low risk, high reward. And even if he just becomes a serviceable player, again, I go back to that waffle team that I put up there. And the 3 defenders I put were Callum Jamieson, Harry Barnett, and Rhett Bazzo, all of whom have had limited exposure. So I see the appeal for him there. That being said, Carlton is considering trialling the young defender during the preseason supplemental period if he's not selected in the rookie draft. So if that's the case, if we want to leapfrog Carlton, maybe we take him in the rookie draft, maybe we sign him as a delisted free agent, or we can convince him to come back to WA and train with us instead of Carlton. Either way, he's got some interest from another club. There is a way that we can actually achieve all of this. We could trade into the draft this year, take our 4th selection, use our 5th list spot on Jack Carroll as a delisted free agent, and then instead of taking a rookie pick on an 18-year-old, we draft Denver Granger-Barrass. That is a way to get all of them. Or you could do it in reverse and draft Jack Carroll, unless he signs with GWS as a delisted free agent. I'll just rattle through some options that we have not been linked to. So those 2 we have been publicly linked to, and actually Tom Cleary we have as well, but I don't know if this is more or less likely. 193 centimetre key defender from Port Adelaide. He's 31, he's played 124 games. So the appeal here is again, a ready-made depth option, but he hasn't played a lot of footy, and I don't think he played a game for Port Adelaide this year. He's quoted as saying over the last 12 months, the club has moved in a different direction with its defensive structure and personnel. Whilst I understand this, I still feel as though I have more to offer. Again, we've been linked to Tom Cleary. We were asked if we were trading for him in the trade period. Matt Clark said no. He was actually under contract, so at the time we did have to trade for him, but Port Adelaide have paid him out, which means he is now a delisted free agent. So not a bad option here, I think. Again, I still want to probably draft a key defensive prospect that has some potential, but given we've just traded Tom Barras, I do think there is a need for some ready-made, mature-bodied talent. And so if it's a measure of who's going to be better in 2025 between Denver and Tom Cleary, hard for me to say. Neither of them have been playing well at AFL level in recent times. I suppose with Denver, at least you get a little bit more long-term potential. But if we miss out on Denver or West Coast decides they don't want him, Tom Cleary could seriously be on the cards. I've got 4 more options I'll move through fairly quickly because I don't think any of these are really realistic, but starting with Jackson Pryor. He's a West Australian player who was an inside mid at Brisbane, played a fair bit of both tall and small defender. So he is versatile, and I'd imagine our needs are really midfield. So I've chucked him in here because, if I'm not mistaken, his dad played for us. If his dad is Michael Pryor, who I think it is, he was actually the first Eagles player I ever met in my life at Hungry Jack's in like 2002. So please draft him, West Coast. Now, he's actually been linked more specifically to Essendon, so there is a chance he joins them as a delisted free agent. But in terms of, being a mature body in the right position as an inside mid, I'm not necessarily campaigning for it. I know he's played a fair bit of time in defense, but he's naturally a midfielder. He's still definitely an option if we decide, we prefer him to Jack Carroll, but it seems like we're more into Jack Carroll. I also chucked Caelan Lane in here. Caelan Lane is originally from Claremont in the Waffle. He's 22, and from what I can gather, has played some decent VFL footy for the Brisbane Lions in reserve. However, he has done an ACL in July, and he's a ruckman, which we maybe don't really need. Well, I'll put it this way. I've said it in previous videos. I'd probably want to improve who our best ruck is, but I wouldn't say it's a pressing need for us to draft one. However, a 22-year-old one with some level of potential, and he's from Western Australia, I'd consider it, but maybe the ACL probably rules him out of getting picked up anywhere. Maybe he does a year in the state leagues and tries to get another option. But I think there's, some potential to be an AFL ruckman here. Caleb Marchbank, by position, is technically a player that we could look at. 193 centimetre key position defender. He's been at Carlton. He was pick 6 actually in 2014 to GWS. So he's on the older side, if my math is correct. He will be 28, turning 29 next year. But again, we just talked about Tom Cleary, who's 31. Now, there has been no link to West Coast at all, but he is technically in the right position and has been delisted and has played 56 games at AFL and ticks a lot of the boxes that I've talked about in this video. Last I read, Caleb was considering whether he'd play footy at all next year. So again, not really that realistic. However, if West Coast was suddenly linked to Caleb Marchbank, I think that would make perfect sense. And then finally, there's Brandon Parfitt, who was delisted by Geelong after playing 130 games. 130 games is a solid career in itself. He's only played 20 games in a season twice. He's 180 centimetre inside midfielder and just got pushed out at Geelong. Again, just provides that mature depth. He's in his mid-20s and has played a fair bit of AFL in a good side, and I think he could add something to us. I did read that there was some connection to West Coast, but I'm not sure if that just came from like Twitter or Reddit or something like that. I haven't seen it reported on. If it has been, I missed it. Either way, it was a while ago. But technically, is he any worse a prospect than Jack Carroll? I'm not sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets picked up somewhere. I wouldn't say he's one that jumps off the page as someone we desperately need to sign, but if we're going to sign a midfielder, I would think that we would consider Brandon Parfitt. So there you have it, guys. Those are some delisted free agents that I think we could look at. Again, probably isolate it to the ones we've actually been talked about as getting, and that's Jack Carroll, potentially Denver Granger-Barrass, or Tom Cleary. And I'd imagine at max, we sign 2 of them. I think we kind of need both positions in terms of depth, and the timeline of how we get these players is unclear. Like I said, we might get Tom Cleary, who's probably unlikely to get picked up by anyone. He's not going to get rookie listed, so he's one we could have as a train on. Denver is somebody we want to see train with us first, I think, before getting a feel for how committed he is. But potentially, we take our 4 picks in the draft, we sign Jack Carroll as a delisted free agent, and then maybe rookie list Denver. I think that plugs a few gaps. But as always, I look forward to your input in the comments section, particularly if you're a fan who goes for either Carlton or Hawthorn or Port Adelaide. Let me know what you think of these players. But thank you for watching. Thanks for being subscribed. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.